On March 12, 1947, the Cold War begins with the Truman Doctrine. But what was the Truman Doctrine? And events in which two countries triggered its establishment? The US, Britain, and the Soviet Union worked together to defeat Adolf Hitler and the Axis powers in World War II. Before the war had even ended, the alliance began to break down as capitalist and communist ideologies clashed. The Soviet Union pushed Eastern Europe toward communism, while the US promoted democracy in the West. In February 1947, Britain informed the US that it could no longer provide financial and military aid to Greece and Turkey. Supported by the Soviets, a communist-led insurgency in Greece had been battling the Greek royal government since the end of World War II. The Soviets were also demanding that Turkey share control over the Dardanelles, the strategic narrow strait that connects the Mediterranean and Black Seas. US President Harry Truman gave a speech before a joint session of Congress on March 12th. He asked for $400 million in US aid for Greece and Turkey to prevent communist takeover. He called this aid an investment in world freedom and world peace. Many see Truman's speech as the declaration of the Cold War. In this Truman Doctrine, he proclaimed that the US must act immediately and commit to use diplomatic, economic, and, if necessary, military means to promote freedom. Truman stated that the nations of the world faced a choice. That choice, he claimed, was too often not a free one. Congress approved Truman's request for funding 2 months later. With US help, Greece and Turkey were able to hold off efforts to bring them under Soviet control. The Truman Doctrine effectively convinced Americans that the US was locked in a life-or-death struggle with the Soviet Union. The following year, the Marshall Plan, named for Secretary of State George Marshall, was introduced to help Europe rebuild economically after World War II, helping to prevent communist takeover. In 1949, 2 years after Truman's famous address, the US, Canada, and 10 Western European nations formed NATO. This military alliance furthered the aims of the Truman Doctrine. Both Greece and Turkey joined NATO in 1952, bringing the alliance's number up to 14. NATO has 32 members today. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1894, Coca-Cola, originally a fountain drink, is sold in a glass bottle for the first time. In 1930, Indian independence leader Gandhi begins his 241-mile protest march to the sea. In 1933, FDR gives the first of many national radio addresses known as the Fireside Chats. In 1938, Adolf Hitler's troops march into Austria in what is called the Anschluss. In 1968, oil is discovered in Alaska's Prudhoe Bay, profoundly transforming the state. In 1990, 1,000 disabled Americans crawl up the steps of the US Capitol to push for the ADA. In 2003, 15-year-old Elizabeth Smart is found alive months after being abducted from her Utah home. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Which Russian Tsar was assassinated by a bomb in the streets of St. Petersburg? Alexander II? Nicholas II? Ivan the Terrible? Or Peter the Great? Liked learning about the Truman Doctrine? Then you'll love this one about a Cold War spy exchange. Tap the screen to keep the story going on Today in History.